Ouija, Origin of Evil is a new horror movie directed by Mike Flanagan. It's the sequel to 2014's movie Ouija, which, let's face it, was not really good. In fact, it was probably one of the worst horror movies ever made. So this time around we have a prequel set in 1967, and it's the story of a mother who's raising two daughters after their father has died, and they run a scam business where they can supposedly talk to ghosts. They get clients in, take their money, and tell them that they're talking to their dead loved ones, when in fact they're doing all sorts of tricks and stuff, making candles blow out, rattling the table, all that kind of stuff. So when financial hardship falls upon them, they decide that it'd be a great idea to get a Ouija board to spice things up a little bit. Yeah, like that's a good idea. It doesn't take too long before the youngest daughter actually starts communicating with real spirits, and these aren't the kind of spirits that you want to be communicating with. Let's just say things go pretty bad pretty quickly, and ladies and gentlemen, we have a horror movie. Now, like I said, the first Ouija from 2014 was, to put it mildly, an abomination. It was a really bad movie, full of bland characters. It was a boring movie. Nothing really happened. The scares were crap. It was full of fake jump scares, that sort of thing, and it was not a good movie. So when they announced that they were making a prequel, no one really cared. However, this movie is amazingly good. It is one of the best horror sequels I've ever seen in terms of quality. So for starters, the thing that escalated this movie into something brilliant, and it's the same thing that I had with Lights Out, which came out earlier this year, was the characters. The characters in this movie were so well written. They were likable people, sympathetic characters that we really got behind. And, you know, when things started going bad, we didn't want them to be in this situation. You really feel for these people. The performances were absolutely amazing. Elizabeth Reesa, who played the mum, and Annalise Basso as the eldest daughter Lena, both gave amazing performances. Henry Thomas, who was Elliot from E.T., was great as a character named Father Tom, who was both a priest and the school principal. But ladies and gentlemen, the Oscar goes to Lulu Wilson as Doris Zander, the youngest girl. She blew my freaking mind. This kid is up there with Regan from The Exorcist and Damien from The Omen. Oh man, she was one of the scariest kids I've ever seen in a horror movie. Just to the point where she was actually threatening, even when she's not doing anything, when she's just talking very calmly and cutely. You just kind of felt like she was about to put her fist inside you and rip your entrails out or something like that. She was brilliant. The direction in this film was amazing. Mike Flanagan has done some great horror movies, including Oculus and Hush, and this is probably his best work to date, I think. The setting in the 60s was extremely believable. The production design, you know, the look of everything from the costumes and set design, that kind of stuff, everything just really popped. And not only that, they did this incredible technique of making it kind of look like an old 60s movie, from the original Universal logo that came up at the start of the movie. And not only that, when the actual title comes up and, you know, it has like the Roman numeral thing down the bottom and everything, and it all looked very 60s. And also using the little indicator up in the top corner of the picture when the film reel is about to change, and then when it does change, having a very slight skip in the frame, which you probably won't even notice, but it was there, and it was a really neat touch. But one of the main things that they nailed in this movie was the build-up of tension, as opposed to relying on jump scares. Pretty much throughout the first act, there wasn't really anything that happened. It wasn't until the second act that all the scary stuff starts happening, but they gave us that time to get to know the characters and to get to like them. So when things did start going wrong, we actually cared about them, and I thought that was fantastic, and it's not something you really see a lot in horror movies these days. And the script was very well written as well. There wasn't any forced exposition in the dialogue or anything. It was very natural dialogue, and there was one line in particular that I adored, and it had me laugh out loud, where of the three characters, when the evil's going down and that sort of thing, one of them suggests that they split up, and the eldest daughter says something along the lines of, "What do you mean split up? That is the dumbest idea in the world." And I love that so much. I love that it was actually making a note of how stupid that is in horror movies when the characters do split up. So, well done. And I also thought that they gave the evil entity in the film a decent backstory. I really dug who he was and why he was doing what he was doing. So while I really dug Ouija Origin of Evil, it wasn't a perfect movie. There were a few things that I thought let it down a little bit. For one, in the second act, like when we sort of start getting the tension building up, which was great, it then unfortunately sort of went into a bit of a lull, like it disappeared for a while before coming back in the really strong third act. And I just thought that they could have kept the tension going. Like, I thought the pacing could have been done a little bit better. And there are a couple of other things. For one, they did implement a lot of sort of 60s filming styles. Like, they used a lot of zooms instead of actually moving the camera back and forth physically. And there was one scene where, you know, there was a bit of tension going on between some characters and it kept cutting between them. But unfortunately, they were sort of zooming in on some people, zooming out on others, and so there was just one scene where it was just going back and forth, and it was a little bit off-putting. They probably could have edited that a little bit better. Having said that, I'm sure the editor sat down and actually that was the only takes that he had that were going back and forth, so I can imagine it would have been a bit of a nightmare. And the only other thing was, and look, I get why they did it, but they used a lot of sort of CG stuff to, you know, enhance the demonic effects, that kind of thing. And being that the movie was set in the 60s and kind of had such a 60s vibe to it, I just sort of thought the CG took us out a little bit. I mean, it was good CG, don't get me wrong, but I just kind of felt that it didn't really blend well with that 60s setting. But that being said, these are all minor gripes, okay? It was a fantastic horror film. If you're after a genuinely scary movie that is gonna stay with you afterwards. I mean, I got home and, you know, I actually had that feeling of walking down the dark hallway and having a look over my shoulder, and when you see a shadow moving in the corner, it's like, holy shit, what's that? Oh, it's just my girlfriend. And that hasn't happened in a while, so this movie was really effective. It was a great movie, well acted, well directed. I'm gonna give Ouija Origin of Evil an 8.5 out of 10. So there you have it, there's your Halloween movie viewing taken care of. Definitely go see this one in the theaters, and let's support good horror movies so we can get more movies like this. And in the meantime, if you've seen Ouija 2 Origin of Evil, let me know what you thought of it. I hope you dug it as much as I did. Drop me some comments either here or on Facebook. All my social media links are down in the description because I like to talk about movies and I would love to talk about movies with you. See you next time.
Click subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest movie reviews. Skynet will be taking over any day now, so what have you got to lose? Nyah.